Hi everyone, this is Tanya from Flying Dog Studio. Thank you so much for joining me as we do something a little bit different today. And I've done a loose drawing before. It's been about a year ago. I'll link that down below if you want to take a look. It was a pen drawing. But recently my family and I went on a little trip to the Ozark Mountains, which are located in the southern United States. And we went to the portion that was in Arkansas. And we visited Blanchard Springs Caverns. Now, we didn't go into the caverns. We actually went to the springs, and this is the waterfall coming out from those caverns. And I decided I wanted to do a loose drawing of that, sort of a travel journal, if you will. And this is my first entry. So, obviously, we're planning some big travels here. I hope it works out for us, Lord willing. But I started out this drawing, as you can see on the right hand side, just kind of a loose sketch. I zoomed in and I only got the parts that I wanted to get. Now I'm coming back with almost a hatching and sometimes a cross hatching movement with my pencil. And if you're interested in this pencil, I'll link that video down below. This is the Lamy pencil. It was their Lamy All-Star, and this is my first time to really use it like this. And I do like it. I didn't care much for it when I first opened it, but and took it out of the package, but I think it's okay. It wasn't worth the money I paid. It's just a pencil, but I did like it for this project. So I will link that down below. Also, in the upper part of the screen, you'll see I have my Tombow eraser. Can't do anything without that. I love that eraser. This pencil actually has an eraser, but I don't use it. I like the Tombow eraser. It's a little more exact in erasing. But since I'm doing a loose sketch, I'm trying not to erase. And the only time that I use that Tombow eraser was to get those kind of loose contour lines down when I'm just kind of laying everything out. So that's why I had it on the screen, so you can see that. Now I'm working into the water part, and I thought the biggest challenge would be, and I think it really was, and that was trying to convey the waterfall itself, because the sunlight was hitting it so hard that the bottom part of it, where it had all the foam, was completely white and bright, and you can tell it almost glows in the videos. So I'm kind of avoiding that area. I'm working on all the dark spaces first, and that's what I like to do when I am working with a loose drawing like this. I make it kind of a tonal drawing, and that's how all of these are going to be in my travel journal, just a little bit of a tonal drawing. And right now we're working on the rocks, and here is a shot of those rocks. Now you can see a hole kind of up into the right of where that waterfall is coming out, and that is where it used to come out, but as it wore things down, it has moved down to that lower portion. And what's impressive, I don't know if you noticed in the photograph, but trees are growing right on top of these rocks. So if you're talking western Arkansas, you're talking rocks. I mean, the whole place is just like one big massive rock. And if you're not from the United States, when I say the Ozark Mountains, they're not mountains like the Rocky Mountains in the United States. They are like huge hills. So they don't have a timber line. Everything is just green trees all the way to the top, but they are huge. And when we were traveling there, my ears were popping in and out, if you know what I'm talking about, going up and down hills. Every time I swallowed, my ears would pop. So we were increasing in elevation. I don't know what the elevation was for this place, but we were increasing in elevation. Now, I actually live in hills, and I grew up in the foothills of the Ozarks, but our hills were not as tall as the Ozarks. So those are the hills that are kind of rolling hills that go into the Ozarks where I grew up. Right now, we live in a part of Arkansas called Crowley's Ridge, and I will be doing some journaling from Crowley's Ridge because we have some wonderful parks in our area, but our hills are not as big as the Ozark Mountains. Now, these are the rocks that I'm working on, and you can see they're kind of layers. It looks like you could just go with a chisel and peel them out, and that's what we're working on here. I'm trying to get all of that area, so I decided to do some hatching, and then you're going to see, in order to get the roundness of the rock, I'm going to need to do some cross hatching as well. When I was doing the water, you notice my lines went kind of horizontal, and that flattened that out so I could push that back into the waterfall. So I am still anticipating that waterfall. And here is where all of that water goes from the waterfall. That little arch bridge is actually the bridge we traveled out on when we left. Very old bridge, don't know how old. And the trees that I mentioned earlier, you can see I am working on a branch that's coming down, and there were branches that came down into the view. And when I zoomed in on them, I cannot tell you what kind of trees they are. I should know since I was a biology major and I had quite a few botany classes, but I cannot remember what kind of trees these are. You know, the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, I've lost it. So I don't know what trees these are. I'm just going along and kind of roughing in the basic shape, the leaves themselves. I could actually see individual leaves. Now over on the left-hand side, kind of at the top, you'll see some little squiggle areas. There were some leaves up there and I couldn't really see the shape. So those are just going to be squiggle areas. They were kind of roundish in shape. I don't know what kind of trees they were, like I said. I wish that I did. But because this is in the distance, we don't actually have to worry about individual leaves. Now I can see them on the right hand side. So I did draw those in, and you'll see what I'm going to do with those in just a few minutes, because I'm not going to stop just with the pencil. I'm going to be adding some ink in. Well, this is the area I was talking about. I'm going to have to use some hatching and some cross hatching, and I'm going to have to vary the direction of my lines in order to get the shape of those rocks, because they were kind of rounded. So that helps me get the shape. It also helps me to get the depth on this. So I'm going to kind of be skipping around here. You're going to see it skip around. I'm not going to make you suffer through all of those. But when I started over next to that little branch, I thought, you know, I think I'm going to be losing all of this. And I kind of did. And this is the point when I decided, you know, I think I'm going to add some ink to this. And I tossed that around for a while. I didn't know if I really wanted to add ink to this piece, because I wanted it to just be a pencil piece, because a pencil is easy to take with me. If I take a pen with me on a trip, then I run the risk of it leaking on me. And I know you're probably saying, oh, Urban Sketchers take those out all the time. I use a fountain pen all the time. I don't carry my fountain pen with me, because if it's going to leak on anyone, it's going to leak on me. I promise you. It's just, we call that the Eddie curse at our house. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen to us. Now, this is a little rock over to the side, kind of almost in the background, and you can see the rocks under the surface. And I'm going to do this part next, because I want to make certain that I get the shape in and get the shading in before I finish the rocks in the background. I don't want to go too dark on that. So I thought, you know, I'm going to get that little guy in and get all the water around him. And then I can come back and do all the dark in the background, because the shadow, the rock was very dark in itself, and it had a lot of algae and everything on it, moss growing on it, but the shadow was hitting very hard back there. So I thought, you know, I'm going to get the water in up here. And again, I'm doing those horizontal lines, and I'm going back and forth and bringing it into the rock. And the water in this area had little ripples. So I'm not following exactly what the ripples look like. Again, it's a loose sketch. I'm just wanting to indicate where those ripples are coming out from that waterfall. And they had almost little circular areas. And water's hard to do. So if you're just doing it with a pencil, it really is hard to do. And here's some of that moving water. You can see how fast it was moving, and it was so super loud. I have this turned down on here to like 30% of the actual sound of that water. It was just deafening. And we took our little dog with us. My daughter brought her dog along. He's a little rat terrier, and we thought he would be totally freaked out by it. He loved it. He wanted to get closer. But this water comes through a cave system where there are lots of bats, and bats are going to produce guano, and all of that is coming out in the water. And there are signs around warning people, do not get in the water, do not drink this water. And just like a few feet down from us was a family letting their small child, probably about 3 years old, splash around and lay down in the water. And I thought, good heavens. But anyway, you're going to have that. So we're working on those rocks in the back, and you can see I did some vertical lines indicating that this went straight up, and then I'm following that with some light diagonal lines to still give me a shadow but kind of round out that rock. And this is what it looked like straight up above this area. Those trees went straight up above, and there was that opening, and from that opening is where the light was coming down onto the waterfall, and it was quite magical. Okay, here is where I have brought out my pen, and I'm using my Sailor Fude de Manon. This is the one that has the black casing on the outside, so that I'll remember that it has my black ink in it, and I'll put all this information down below so you can see the links of where I get all of my supplies. And I have two Sailor Fude de Manons. I have one that's brown, it has my brown ink in it. And then my Pilot Prera, right now I have brown ink in that. And I wish I had used my Pilot Prera. I thought that this one, since I can make thick and thin lines, it would be best for some of these areas. And it did do a good job, but it's really impartial to my Pilot Prera. But it would have required me to empty it out and put the black ink in, and I just didn't feel like doing that. So I stuck with this one. And I'm using a technique that we have seen. If you have seen the Beatrix Potter study that I've done, or the Cicely Mary Barker, it's a technique that many artists use. And that is using thick and thin lines just to go over the contour lines and leaving some spaces in between so we don't close it up. So we're not wanting to trace every single line. We're wanting to still keep it loose, but I felt like it needed a little more punch. And the waterfall in the back, the only way that is going to really stand out is if the shadows in the back are super dark, and they were super dark in person. So I spent some time on this, and you're not going to see all of it on here, but you will see the final piece in the very end, and that end is coming up. So if you have watched this video, thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new here, welcome. I hope you will join us. I have some more travels coming up in the future and a product review, so be looking for that. And until then, my friends, I will see you in the next one.